Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with part 2 of my full review of the Topping A50s headphone amp and the D50s DAC. This is a match pair meant to be used together as a stack, and so I had done separate first impressions of these, but I decided to do my full review as a pair or as a stack. In my first part of this, part 1, I went over all the specifications and went over the controls, showed you the amp and DAC up close and what all it had on it, and talked about it quite a bit. So if you want that information, go back and watch part 1. This one I'm gonna just pretty much dive into the sound and my feelings about this combo here. So a couple things I will go over again. I did want to mention that these were loaned to me by APOS Audio for review, and right now they sell through APOS for $219.99 for the amp, and yeah. And I had it upside down. Didn't want to show it to you upside down anyway. And $249.99 for the DAC. This is a balanced headphone amp, and like I said, these work together really well as a match pair. So anyway, getting into my review, or part 2 of my review, first I wanted to talk a little bit about the equipment I used reviewing these. First of all, my clean power supply was provided by Core Power Technologies, and I used 2 different sources for these for this equipment here. My Cambridge Audio 540C CD player as a transport only, running a digital signal into the DAC, and also I used my HP desktop computer as a digital source to feed the USB input on the DAC. So, excuse me just a second. The headphones I used to do this review were the Hi-Fi Man Sandara and the LSA HP2 Ultra. And the reason I use those two is because this headphone does have a 4.4 millimeter Pentacon output on it. It's a balanced output, and I only have 2 cables that have 4.4 millimeter connections at the amp end, and they both have the same 3.5 millimeter connections at the headphone end. So I'm kind of limited on how many headphones I can use from the balanced output of this. So that would be the Hi-Fi Man Sandara and LSA HP2 Ultra. From the single-ended output, I use the ZMF Verite that I've got on loan right now, and the LSA HP Diamond that is the brand new LSA headphone that I have on loan right now. Music wise, pretty much my typical. I use a mixture of rock, some pop, some electronic, and a lot of acoustical music to do my reviews. I like natural sounds. Natural acoustic instruments, pianos, guitars, things like that, string instruments. And then I guess I should get into the sound of this. Once again, I am reviewing these as a stack. I will talk a little bit about them separately, but anyway, this review is pretty much the 2 combined. The first thing I noticed, and looking at the specs on these, which I gave in the first review, or the first part, is these things, according to Topping, measure extremely well. And from what I've seen, I personally don't have the equipment to do measurements on these, but other people have, and apparently they're agreeing that these do measure extremely well. So getting into the sound, I would have to say the first thing I would tell you is they do sound like they measure extremely well. The sound is crystal clean. It is exceptionally clear and it is very detailed, and the resolution is outstanding. The sound is well balanced and linear in my opinion. I don't hear any emphasis anywhere, not in the bass, not in the treble. I don't hear any dips, I don't hear any roll-offs. The soundstage is large. It has very good width, it has good height, and it has good depth. I did want to mention though that in my opinion this amp does sound a little bit better from the balanced output. Not only does it have more power than the single-ended output, but in my opinion I believe it also has a larger soundstage with more depth and more layering. And that's pretty much my opinion of every amp that I have ever reviewed that was balanced. They do sound better from their balanced output. I'm not saying that balanced amps are necessarily better than single-ended amps, but it has been my experience if an amp does have a balanced output, it will sound better from its balanced output than the single-ended. Not a huge difference. Usually the difference I hear is obviously they almost always have more power from the balanced output because the voltage is doubled, which means you actually have 4 times the wattage. But also they usually have a larger, more layered soundstage, and I can't think of an amp that wasn't the case. But anyway, want to talk about the power of the amp a little bit. From the balanced output, this amp I think is rated at 3.5 watts per channel into 32 ohms and has very good power. The most power hungry headphone I had to use from the balanced output was a Hi-Fi Man Sundara, which isn't extremely power hungry, but it does require pretty substantial current for it to sound right. And this amp did an outstanding job with the Sundara from the balanced output. From the single-ended output, I feel it came up a little bit short with the Sundara. It sounds good, but it's not quite taking the Sundara as far as it could go. I believe the Sundara has another 5 or 10% available that this amp isn't reaching that full potential from the single-ended output. But once again, from the balanced output, yes. So if you have a Sundara, an HE500, an HE560, if you got an Aria, any of these Hi-Fi Man headphones that need a lot of current, or other brands, you're probably or almost definitely going to want to invest in a balanced cable if you're using this amp. I did do a test on this amp, and I try to do this on every amp that I do review, and that is to test the background noise. And the way I do this is I have an old set of Sony DJ headphones that are extremely efficient. They're about 112 decibels at 1 milliwatt. They're more efficient than most IEMs. And if there is any hiss in an amp, these are going to pick it up. So anyway, what I did is first I plugged it into, well, I can only plug it into the single-ended output because it has a 1/4-inch plug on it. I don't have a balanced cable from that. But from the single-ended output on low gain, I paused my CD player and with the amp on low gain, turned the volume knob all the way to the max, which is like 5 o'clock on the dial. And I heard absolutely zero background noise, absolutely zero hiss. Then I repeated that and did the same thing with the amp on high gain, and exactly the same results. Absolutely zero hiss or background noise. So, and there are very few amps that can duplicate that. The Burson Playmate 2 that I just reviewed a short time ago was like that. I could max out the volume and not pick up any background noise. But yet, I read a review somewhere, I don't know who it was, that said that the Burson Playmate had too much background hiss to use IEMs with it. So I'm guessing that either his unit was defective or it was in his source or something was going on, or maybe his power wasn't clean enough, because I picked up zero hiss and background noise in the Burson Playmate, the same as I did with this amp. So, but like I said, I've reviewed some amps up in the $2,000 range that couldn't duplicate this, that did have hiss in the background when turning the volume knob up, some as early as, like, 2 or 3 o'clock on the dial. Anyway, what I wanted to do is compare this a little bit to a few other amps and DACs that I had at the time, and they're not exactly the same price, but they're close, and I feel they're worth comparing. I've had this amp for like 3 months and this DAC for like a month and a half. I was waiting for the DAC to come in before I could really do the review. Until then, I used the lower price Topping E30 DAC with this, but and not a whole lot of difference between the two. This one, the D50, uses 2 of the DAC chips, where the E30 only uses 1. And I'm hearing a slight difference, but anyway. So I wanted to compare this stack to the iFi Zen stack, which would be the Zen DAC and the Zen Can. And I did have those just recently at the same time as I had this, and I was able to set them side by side on my desk using the USB output from my desk computer into both of these and compare them. And comparing the Zen DAC and the Zen Can, or the Zen DAC Zen Can stack and the Topping stack, first of all, they both had very good power. The Zen Can and the Topping A50s headphone amp, out of their balanced outputs, both had very good power. Although the Zen Can, from its single-ended output, seemed to have a lot more power than the A50s does from its single-ended output. The Zen Can could actually drive the Hi-Fi Man HE560 very well from its single-ended output, and the Zen, or the Topping, just can't. It falls way short of having enough power to drive the HE560 well from a single-ended output. So power-wise, both are very good from their balanced output, but the Zen Can has a lot more power available from its single-ended output. Comparing the sound, I think that the Topping DAC, the D50, is a better, cleaner sounding, more detailed DAC than what's in the Zen DAC. It has a larger soundstage, it has better separation. I think it's a better DAC. As far as the overall sound of the Zen stack and the Topping stack, I would say the Topping stack has a little more detail, a little better clarity, but the Zen DAC Zen Can is a little bit warmer, has a little bit more weight to the bass, and I would say has a little more musicality. It's basically what I'm saying is the Topping stack sounds a little more analytical, where the Zen stack is a little warmer, a little bassier, and a little more forgiving of less than perfect recordings. I also had the Burson Playmate 2 at the same time and was able to compare that side by side, and that is a little bit more expensive at about $550 for the combination DAC and amp. So really you're only talking about maybe $70 difference, but it's one unit. The Burson, I would say sound wise, is kind of in between the Topping stack and the iFi Zen DAC Zen Can stack. I would say it's right in the middle as far as clarity and detail, a little better than the Zen stack, but not quite on the level of the Topping. The Topping is just etching out, pulling out a little more detail than the Burson did. But the Burson is a little bit warmer. Once again, a little more emphasis in the bass and a little more of a liquid sound. Once again, I would say that the Topping compared to the Burson sounds a little more on the analytical side. Then I just recently, a couple weeks ago, after sending back the Zencan, I did end up buying the Zen DAC, which I have it on my desk for my desktop headphone listening. But anyway, a couple weeks ago got the iFi Neo IDSD. And that is once again, a combination DAC and headphone amp, and that goes for about $699, so it is a little bit higher in price. But I did also get a chance to compare the two side by side, the Topping stack and the iFi Neo IDSD. And I would say sound-wise, the IDSD is closer in sound to the Zen stack as far as being a slightly warmer, a little more weight to the bass again, a little more liquid, a little smoother sounding than the Topping stack. But the difference is, in my opinion, the IDSD has quite a bit better DAC in it than the Zen DAC does. I think that, to me, the IDSD built-in DAC is at least as good as the Topping D50s. They're both exceptionally clean and clear. They both have a large layered soundstage. To me, the iFi IDSD, the DAC sounds a little, I'm not sure how to describe it. It's a little more of a natural, a little closer to analog sounding to me, where the Topping D50s has a little more of a digital sound. As far as the built-in amp in the IDSD, if I'm using efficient headphones, I really like it a lot. It's a very good sounding amp. Once again, sounds kind of similar to the Zen DAC, Zencan, but it doesn't have a whole lot of power. The built-in amp in the IDSD is a little short on power, where even from the balanced output, I believe it's adequate for the Hi-Fi Man Sundara, but falls just a little bit short of reaching the full potential with the Sundara. I think even from the balanced output, it's just a little bit short on power if you have a Sundara. So as far as power, the Topping stack has a lot more power available than the Neo IDSD. That, I think, is more of a DAC with an amp thrown in. The amp is adequate and actually sounds very good with efficient headphones such as the LSA HP2. It sounded very good with the ZMF Verite too, which is kind of in between. It's not real hard to drive, but it sounded good with that. But anyway, if you need a lot of power, the Topping DAC, the Topping stack does have quite a bit more power available than the IDSD. I think that's rated, at about, I think a little over 1 watt per channel compared to the 3.5 with the Topping stack. One last comparison I wanted to make, and this isn't really a fair comparison, but I did compare, because this Topping DAC is so, or this Topping stack is so detailed and clean and clear, I thought it worthy of comparing it directly to my Audio GD Master 9. Okay, the Master 9, when you figure in shipping, is like a $1,600 amp. And it's just an amp, it's not a DAC. So anyway, price-wise, it's not a fair comparison. But what I found out is that this little topping, and I'm almost positive the topping measures better than the Audio GD Master 9, but the Master 9 just has a warm, just liquid sound that I love. So anyway, I compared the two. And the topping completely holds its own against the Master 9 as far as clarity, detail, soundstage. The only place that the Master 9, in my opinion, beats it is the Master 9 has a little bit warmer sound. It has a little more weight to the bass. You can just sense that huge power behind that amp. And a little more of a liquid sound, a little smoother, kind of round, takes off the rough edges that can get through this topping stack, especially if music's not recorded real well. And the Master 9 just had more of a, I hate this word really, but a lot of people use it, musicality. You know, it's kind of, I don't know. It's a word that doesn't really mean anything, but I don't know a better word to describe that. The music just sounds a little bit more pleasant through the Master 9. So I'm going to call it musicality. I do have a couple of issues with this stack. Nothing major, just a couple of little things. And I really do like it. I mean, if you're looking for the ultimate in clarity, detail, resolution, this stack for under $500, I don't think you can beat it. Okay, I do have a couple of issues. And one is the controls. The unit is so tiny that the controls are tiny. You got this little tiny toggle switch there, and you've got this little screen here that has about, when you go into the menu, it has about 4 lines on it, so you can imagine how small the writing is. So my old eyes are having a hard time reading it, and I have to get in real close, and this little toggle switch and all that. It's just that everything's so small, it's hard for me and my fat fingers to really work it. And same with the amp, with the volume control. The volume control is maybe a ½ inch in diameter, and because it's so small, especially if you're in high gain, it's kind of touchy. It's hard to make small adjustments to the sound. You know, it's very easy to give it a little turn and just jump up a lot in volume. So the small size of it, I would prefer they were a little larger and the controls were a little bit bigger, but you know, that's not a huge deal, and that might not matter at all to you. Okay, I do have one other issue, and I don't really know how to explain this. I actually got a hold of APOS and asked them about this, but I haven't got a response back. Okay, I used the USB input on this from my computer, and I was using the optical input from my CD player. Okay, it wasn't until a few days ago that I switched over and I tried the coaxial input, and I had no sound. This was from my Cambridge Audio CD player, and I hooked it up to the coaxial input and made sure it was set to coaxial, but I had no sound whatsoever, nothing. Okay, so I unhooked it, hooked the coaxial output of the CD player to a different DAC, and it worked fine. I hooked it up to the Topping E30, and it worked fine. So apparently the coaxial output of my CD player is working okay, but I couldn't get it to work with this player. So I thought that the coaxial input on this did not work. So I actually contacted APOS, told them that the coaxial input wasn't working. Well, earlier today, I decided to use the coaxial output of a Sony CD player, hooked it up, and it worked fine. So the coaxial input of this works with my Sony CD player, but not my Cambridge Audio. And I can't figure out why. Because the Cambridge Audio works with every other DAC I've hooked it to, including a Topping E30, but it's not working with this. But the Sony coaxial output from the Sony player worked fine with this. So I'm not sure what's going on. So I did get a hold of Topping to try to find out if they know a reason for that. Possibly there's some setting in this that I'm not aware of, and you know, I messed it up. I don't know for sure. So anyway, if I find out, I'll put out a short update video and let you know what the problem was, if it was me or if there's something with the DAC. But like I said, the CD player, my Cambridge Audio works fine with other DACs, but not this one for some reason. So anyway, but other than that, I have no issues. I really like these. Like I said, if you're looking for the ultimate in clarity, detail, resolution, this could be the perfect stack for you, this amp and DAC. What it does lack a little bit is musicality. I'm using that word again. It sounds a little bit analytical. When I compared this to the Zen Stack, the Burson Playmate, the IFFI Neo IDSD, and my Audio GD Master 9, it sounded a little bit drier and a little bit more analytical than any of those. Okay, that might be exactly what you're looking for. I mean, many would say that that means that it's a well-built, well-measuring amp and DAC that's doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're not coloring the sound at all. But it can get a little bit fatiguing. You know, that ultra clarity, and like I said, to me at times it just sounds a little bit dry, where some of the other amps like the IFI, they're a little bit warmer and a little bit smoother, and I can listen for longer, but I'm not getting quite the details. So, you know, depending on what you're looking for, this could be perfect. I mean, the stack can be bought for under $500, and it's got enough power for almost any headphone, as long as you use a balanced output. And yeah, I can definitely recommend it, unless you don't want an analytical sound. But, you know, that depends on your headphone too. If you have a very detailed analytical headphone, this might not be an ideal match. The two might be too much. But if you have a headphone that, you know, you want to get a little more detail out of, this might be perfect. So, you know, I'll leave that choice up to you. But yeah, I can recommend it as long as analytical is not a problem for you. So, and by analytical, I don't mean that in a bad way. To me, analytical just means, you know, very detailed, very clean, but, you know, can sound, I'm not going to say harsh, that's a bad word, but it can get a little fatiguing at times. So, especially if a recording is less than perfect, that's basically what it comes down to. If you have an amp and DAC that are analytical, or a headphone that's analytical, if you listen to music that is recorded very well, you are going to love it. But if you get into recordings that weren't done that well, that analytical, super detail can really emphasize the flaws, and it can become annoying, it can become discouraging. You might end up where you only listen to 10% of your music collection. If you have a combination analytical DAC, amp, and headphone, you may end up only listening to your best recordings and not listen to the rest. So, you know, that's where something with a little less detail can actually, you know, can be a lot better for your average recordings, the bulk of your recordings, you know, because I've had that happen. I've at times, you know, spent a lot of time listening to a really analytical headphone, and I kind of tend to do that. I just listen to my best recordings, and I kind of ignore some of my favorite music. So once in a while, I got to pull out a headphone that's a little less detailed and a little more forgiving to listen to my other recordings. You know, I love the music, but they're not recorded as well, and I still want to listen to those. So anyway, once again, yeah, I recommend this. I really like it. And I guess that's about it. I'm going to wrap this up now. Sorry this got so long. I kind of got wound up a little bit and maybe a little bit too much caffeine today. So anyway, once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you are all welcome to join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. I think we added about 50 members today. I think we're at about 9,850 or something like that. We were kind of leveled off for a couple months where we weren't really growing, and all of a sudden, like the last week, we're gaining like 25 members a day. So I'm not sure what's going on over there. But anyway, you're all welcome over there. And once again, thanks for watching my video.